Welcome, distinguished guests, to the Brain Trust Charity Annual Awards, which will this year incorporate a few extra surprises. One of them is the Avicenna Award, now in its second year, which will be explained in some detail as time wears on. We are actually transmitting live on Apex Global Television, so watch out if you're called up, asked to make a speech, encouraged to do an acrobatic turn. Everything is being recorded on Apex TV, and not just recorded, but broadcast live to the Apex Global audience. And you can see the camera over there, and everything I say is being broadcast too. So I'm anxious to stick more or less to the schedule so that our billions of viewers worldwide aren't disappointed, and we can avoid any lull in the proceedings. Now, I'm going to start with a little something that wasn't on the agenda. It may be none of you had the agenda anyway, but assuming you did, one of the things not on the agenda was what's on the sign outside this room, and it says, Tony Buzan Book Launch. Now, in fact, that was left there from last year when we launched Tony Buzan's biography, written by someone not a million inches from this microphone. And I didn't tell them to put Tony Buzan Book Launch there. I told them to write Brain Trust Lunch and Awards. Well, you know, things get mixed up in the wash. Tony, of course, is the founder of our wonderful charity, the Brain Trust. No donation is too big. All donations are accepted. See me afterwards. Brown envelopes, large diamonds, pieces of platinum, chunks of gold, all accepted. Foreign currency especially welcome to pursue our good works. I'd like to mention some of the good works now, and one of them, Dominic O'Brien, 8 times world memory champion, and Simon Goodman sitting next to him, have done a fabulous job of getting the UK Schools Memory Championship going and televised, and bringing trainers of Dominic's class and also the reigning world champion, Jonas van Essen from Sweden, to England to train kids in underprivileged schools to improve their memory powers. And as you may learn as the afternoon progresses, that memory, the power to memorize, is very much at the core of our existential being. Oh, I'd like you to welcome the Ambassador of Yemen and his wife, just arrived. Welcome, sir. Welcome, madam. And also, if you might give a big hand to Dominic and Simon for their fabulous work in helping us to spread memory power, brain power, and the power of the intellect in areas that quite often don't come into contact with it. So Dominic, Simon, thank you very much. Now, before we progress to what might be termed the major awards, I'd like to justify the somewhat antiquated notice outside. And by sheer chance, they were serendipitously correct. Last year, we published Tony's biography, which I wrote, of which there are some copies over there. And people who didn't get it last year, or people who Tony's feeling very happy about, or anyone who's prepared to give a large donation to the Brain Trust, might well get a copy today. But it was launched a year ago. However, to quote the poet, Tony is a man so various that he seemed to be not one, but all mankind's epitome. And we thought, one book, not enough. So may I now introduce my good friend, Mr. Chris Day. Come up to the podium, Chris. Chris is General Secretary of the World Memory Sports Council, without whom the World Memory Championships, which we've been running for now 23 years, would undoubtedly collapse into total chaos. So a big hand to Chris for his work in that. Chris is also the man who's been charged with getting the next 1,000 volumes of Tony's biography into some form, tangible, virtual, or in print. And I'm very pleased to say that today we have volume 2 about to go up on the websites. This is Tony's e-biog that takes the story even further. And I would invite Chris, threaten Chris, cajole Chris, to present this formally to Tony.
This is a surprise. Who's it about? It's good like it.
Somebody called Anthony Buzan. Yeah.
What a wonderful birthday surprise. So everything else I was going to do this afternoon, I'm going to go and read this book.
We'll ask you questions later.
Anything you'd like to say, Chris?
I have to say that this occasion has to be one of the highlights of the year, and to see your amazing life in print, and to see the incredible achievements which many people aren't aware of the vast number of things that you've done worldwide. And it's, I think we have a responsibility to spread that and let people know the impact that your amazing thoughts have had worldwide. So my responsibility is to get this to as many people as we possibly can.
Well done, Chris.
Let me say something now. Yes, this is I gather this is an e-biog, which means that it grows. And when I scan the tables, many of you, I'm sure, are going to be here. And if you're not, you'll be in the next version, which will be in a couple of months. You will be part of it. You are part of my dream, my biography. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much indeed.
Okay, it's yours. It's yours. Thank you, Chris. Now, we move on to the next part of the programme, which is the award of the Avicenna Medal. Avicenna, as you probably all know, was an Arabic polymath of around 1,000 years ago, and to award the medal was the idea of my very good friend, Professor Dr. Ahmad Ali Khan, who in a few moments will be invited to come here and explain the philosophy behind the award. But not yet. Professor Dr. Ahmad Ali Khan has been saying to me all day, Ray, you know, we agreed I could speak for 2 hours. I said, no, Professor, it's 10 minutes. And he said, and he came back, he said, Ray, my 1.5 hour speech. I said, no, Professor, it was 10 minutes. And then he came to me later and said, my 45-minute detailed address. I said, no, Professor, it's 10 minutes. And then his last try, he grabbed me by the coat just as I was coming into lunch, and he said, I've managed to whittle it down to 15. I said, 10. We're being televised. We have a schedule. We have viewers who may wish to go and make cups of tea. We don't want them to have to break off in the middle of our peroration. So I'm now going to invite, not quite yet, Professor Dr. Ahmed Ali Khan, who is one of our biggest supporters. We could not run the Brain Trust without Professor Dr. Ahmed Ali Khan. And he's going to explain the philosophy. Then I'm going to invite Tony back to help make the award and make any pertinent comments he wishes to make. And I'm going to invite at that point too Prince Mohsen Ali Khan, former winner of the Brain of the Year, Professor Michael Crawford, current Brain of the Year, until about another 35 minutes when he has to give up, and our very good friend, fabulous supporter, absolute superstar, Councillor Frances Stainton, who until she was stabbed in the back by certain devious, worm-like, pre-Cambrian life forms in the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, would have been mayor for another year or two. I would like to invite them all up when Professor Dr. Ali Khan has finished to jointly make the award to the person who we consider to have made the greatest contribution to bridging the intellectual achievements of Islam, other religions, other territories, other philosophies and beliefs. So, at long last, Professor, the floor is yours.
I hope it works. Prince Mohsen Ali Khan, a distinguished Yemeni ambassador, Lady Frances Stanton, distinguished guest. I start in the name of God because of this occasion, the most kind and merciful. And in the Quran it says, "O my Lord, advance me in knowledge." Among his worshippers, the learned fear him the most. And God will raise the ranks of those who believed. We make no differences among prophets, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and the last prophet. Peace be upon them all. So in fact, when we understand this, we all are Muslims. We are the children of the one and same God. So today so much is happening on this side. I just thought I'll just briefly mention about the role of imams. Avicenna was an imam, he was an hafiz. So what he believed was, what I'm just saying is, he believed those who present distorted picture of revealed religion, including Islam, they are not one of us. We need to stand up and explain the true teaching of this Abrahamic faith. Today, some derailed people have taken a stand against the teaching of Islam. They want to prove through their misdeed that kidnapping, killings, bombing, and terrorism, these theological assaults and thought marching equates with barbarism. Ex-Prime Minister Khalida Zia in Dhaka addressed the imams, priest, some years ago. She recalled Saint Sufis, Darwish, and then said, in this region, people embrace Islam by the message of liberality, magnanimity, beauty, tranquility, equality, and amity. Boko Haram and Taliban are not one of us. In preface to Avicenna Book of Medicine, Professor Brown of Islamic Medicine said, "I venture to think it deserves more careful and systematic study." And Dr. Brayford states, science arose in Europe as a result of new methods of investigations, development unknown to Greek. Medicine, as it stands today, did not develop overnight. All faiths have contributed. Some we know, others we don't. Generation came one after another. They carved steps on the Rocky mountains of sea and knowledge. The reach of this greatest civilization one time extended from Latin America to China and everywhere in between. Its architects designed buildings that defied gravity. Its mathematicians created algebra that would build computers. Its physicians examined the bodies and prescribed new treatment. And astronomers looked into heavens and named the space technology, and its writers created thousands of histories, and his poets wrote of love. Following the sack of Baghdad by Mongols, the chariot of knowledge passed to the Europe, and this is an injury from Muslim world never recovered until today. So why do we award the Avicenna medal? The whole thing is to put the terrible historical wrong right, because as Voltaire said, history will not be history until you live through it. So one of the reasons why I'm meeting here is just to address those aspects of history and just bring to the attention the 1001 inventions done by the qualitative research. So Avicenna Award, why do we award it? It's a prestigious award, exists to honor scholars, those who have contributed a major new in promoting enduring legacy of 1001 Islamic invention of all faiths, with notable efforts to educate others, transgressing the present ossified intellectual bondage. They have changed things by solid practice. Those whose work has brought distinction and whose work tells the story of the claim that respect the international world. They had the courage, vision, hard work, and their citations sound and describe the achievements which they have done. That their work has made a difference, truly, a scientific mind. A scientific mind altogether is unafraid of having no mercy on you. Likewise, we have got genius, like who could paint pictures in words, tell stories in the lilting verses. Yes, he or she doesn't have to be Tony Bazan. Ladies and gentlemen, today we also celebrate 72 years of Tony Bazan's outstanding life. His truly scientific mind was not content altogether, was not afraid of new. And indeed, celebration of Tony Bazan's birthday is a befitting tribute to Avicenna gold medal himself. Briefly about Avicenna, his name was Abu Ali Husni Abdullah, master and head, chief master, second teacher to Aristotle, Hakim. His longest poem contains 1,000 verses. And he wrote the logic into the poem in order to help his brother, who was not that intelligent like him. So that was the aspect of Avicenna. He completed and memorized Holy Quran by the age of 10, and then later on into the medicine and other aspects. He was described by Gruger. His medical experience was greater than Galen. He demonstrated mind like Goethe and possessed genius similar to Leonardo da Vinci. A pious cultural Persian, a great sage, a reader of ancient books, skilled, was experienced in all that he left inherited. With the virtues of every plant, beneficial and useful, the wisdom of philosophers, he had achieved everything. Molder of tastes and literary tradition, not by the virtue of craft he created, not by the profession, is the name of Avicenna, super intellectual. He could remember 5 volumes of canon, 1,000,000 words when he was in exile. So that was the aspect you could have a look at. So today we meet to honor him. Avicenna died on the prayer mat with a pen in his hand. Finally, we just would like to thank the founders of the Brain Trust, Tony Bazan and Raymond Keane. Without your help, it wouldn't have been possible. So I ask you to just make an applause and acknowledge their works. And briefly as to why do we have to just come and listen to, because we need to get the history right. Because in the scientific circle, for example, it is still believed that Muslims made no contribution. They said it's only for in the compilation of the knowledge. In their history of medicine, Lyons and Petrolis said, certainly Muslims made no original contribution. That is not correct. 1,001 inventions that has been. So we have, this is a human right issue, we just have to think about it. The hard work, the computers and all those creation simply cannot go astray. We need to be honest. We cannot plagiarize the qualitative research. So even when my generation grew up in schools, in the universities, we were taught about Einstein's and then Kipling's Weizmann, Burden, but we were not told about anything about the Muslim scientists, not even in medical college. I knew about Avicenna recently when I came to Great Britain, recently, few months. So this is how much the Muslim world, the ambassador, knows about the contribution made by all these great people in the past. This is food for thought. We need to listen to this. So, a play was made by Sir Allama Iqbal at a conference in Hyderabad, at Osmania University, founded by my uncle Abdul Rahman Khan, and so happened Prince Mohsen Ali Khan was his student, is here. So we should not play games with the qualitative research because it's prevent truth appearing, promote falsehood, wrong diagnosis, tragedies which are happening in NHS, the Francis report, the Macpherson report, these common reports, qualitative research, MMR tragedies and how it has damaged things. So it is essential in order to understand culture, we need to understand and have a proper systematic study. It's just like talking about nutrition and not mentioning Michael Crawford. Talking about mind maps and not mentioning Tony Buzan. Talking about chess, not talking about Raymond Keane and Julian Simple. Does it make sense? It doesn't, does it? So, finally, even Prince of Charles said, denying the Muslim scientists their due acknowledgement is the Western mindset, a straitjacket about history, pride and prejudice. So today's ceremony is the testimony to this process that we're standing up and acknowledging the work. Because, can I just tell you something which I never came to know, that one of the first scientists who made the translation, or who made the 1001 invention was in fact a Christian. He was a Christian Arab scientist with the name of Ibn Masawa. Ibn Masawa. Now how many people know? Not many. Masawa Senior, he was known in the West. Do you know about him?
No.
No, right. So he was the first translator of this 1001 invention And after him is a student Hunyan Ibn, who just did so much on the eye diseases, and he wrote on the Alexandrian details and wrote a systematic study on the disease of the eye. So these Christian, Arabs, Jewish, Muslim scientists made contribution to the science, society, and civilization. And we need today to acknowledge that. And finally, the other notable scientist was a Jewish physician and philosopher with the name of Abu Imran Musa ibn Maimun, Maimonides. You probably know by Maimonides. He was born in Cadiz, Spain. His father was a rabbi. He was student of both Ibn Rushd and Ibn Tufayl. Maimonides, he became the physician to the famous king Salahuddin Ayyubi. And there he made a tremendous amount of publishing and book writing. Minkin, an eminent rabbi and scholar, wrote in 1968, it was Muhammad in Spain. He said it was Muhammad in Spain, the only land the Jewish knew in nearly 1,000 years of their dispersion, which made the genius of Moses, Maimonides possible. That was the sort of a climate. So finally, Abdus Salam, the Nobel Physics laureate, one of the only Muslim physicists, he said, what is happening in the Muslim world? Not a single acknowledgement, qualitative research published in the last, say, 500 years. Since the days of the Harun al-Rashid, the injury from which the Muslim world never recovered. So, I just quote by saying something interesting about Avicenna as to when he said, so you need to know is never satisfied. And this is an interesting story by one of his contemporaries. He said, I heard Avicenna was dying. I hurried to his house for a last look, so I could see that he would not survive long. When they told him of my coming, he opened his eyes and said, are you so-and-so? I said, yes. Avicenna said, I am told you are expert on the resolution of a knotty problem and the laws of inheritance of Islam, and he alluded to a well-known puzzle. I said, his friend said, Ibn Sina, at this time when you're dying, why? He replied, don't you think it is better I should be dying knowing rather than ignorant? With sorrow in my head, I told him what I knew, taking my leave. I had not yet crossed the portals of his house when the cry arose from the inside, Avicenna is dead. So, ladies and gentlemen, learning never stops. I just briefly finished by quoting a chapter 31, verse 27 of the biblical book, which is the Quranic book, which confirms all the heavenly books which came before. In fact, we all are Muslims, what we need to understand, children of the one and the same God, and the Quran says, though all the trees on earth were pen, and all the seas were ink, 7 seas after to replenish it, yet the words of my Lord be never spent. Thy Lord is mighty and all wise. We make no difference in the prophets and the books. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was brilliant. Well done. Thank you.
This is for you.
Oh, thank you very much. Super. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ahmed Ali Khan. Now, we are going to move to the award of the Avicenna Medal, and I would like to invite Francis Stainton, Prince Mohsen Ali Khan and Professor Crawford up here to assist in giving the award, if that's okay. And I'd like to invite Professor Tony Buzan to make the formal announcement of the presentation.
Sadly and happily at the same moment, I am at this moment the holder of the Avicenna Award. And within a few minutes, I am no longer going to be that awardee. The award was something that came as a surprise for me to the day a year, in other words, Sunday, like today. And Ray gave me my biography, which was a surprise. But in the back of the book, how many of you have the biography? A number of you I know do. Yes, yes. And in the back, it says, the award. I didn't know it was there. And I was thumbing through my biography for the first time in my life. And it said on Sunday, the June the 2nd, which is the same day, 2013, on his 71st birthday, so exactly 1 year ago, Tony Buzan was awarded the inaugural gold medal of the Avicenna Society by Professor Dr. Ahmed Ali Khan. And I hadn't read about or learned about Avicenna. And I discovered this man, and he was like Leonardo da Vinci. He was a poet, he was a philosopher, he was a scientist, he was a writer, he was a thinker, he fought for things with incredible energy and persistence, and he was known as the man who knows all things. And this was the launching of a new award. And I thought, what a privilege, what an honor, what a responsibility. And the responsibility was not a weight on my shoulders, because the award is based on the bridging of other cultures, the Islamic culture, the Christian culture, the West, the East, the North, the South, all the warring, differing cultures, with the whole idea of allowing each child, each individual, to be able to use this God-given power of the brain, to use it for the purpose of communication, for mutuality, for harmony. And I thought that responsibility is actually a wonderful gift. You know, imagine having the gift of being able to talk to people about communication, harmony, people coming together, world peace. I thought it's what I would like to do anyway, and much of the time I was beginning to do that. So the Avicenna Award is based on that. And it's given to a candidate who, if you like, is caring for, looking after, nurturing the human race in the context of the different cultures and the development of intelligence. The candidates this year, numerous. The new awardee is an extraordinary individual. I did not make the decision, it was obviously a committee, but were I to give that banner, that baton, almost like a peace baton, I would give it, if I had the only choice, the only vote, to the individual who is going to receive it. The individual is a genius, like Avicenna. The individual as a child was perceived by culture, by education, by the local people, by the family, this individual seen as a cretin, as a moron, as unintelligent, as one who would never do well, couldn't go to school, was dumb. So this individual had to be tested. And the testing was obviously IQ to confirm that her IQ was very, very, very low. Unfortunately, she scored very highly, which contradicted everybody's expectation. And her IQ came out to 168 at the age of 4.5. And so she was immediately brought into Mensa, one of the youngest ever and highest IQ members of Mensa, and did fairly well, and had basically explained that the reason why she was dumb, in other words, she didn't speak until she was 4.5, was that there was no point in speaking. There wasn't much to say. People were chatting about X, Y, Z, and I, as a young child, can draw in what I want without having to learn all this stuff called grammar and words and vocabulary, which was a very intelligent thing to do. In fact, Einstein was similar. What is the point of talking when you can just tell people what to bring you, get your food, get everything you want? And, sorry?
Just point to it.
Yes, literally just point to it, which is what the intelligent baby does, right from the womb out. So this particular individual began to evolve and became very purposeful, very directed, very fascinated by all things. And at school just became fascinated by everything. And she began to study and became very interested in mathematics, in chemistry, physics, quantum mechanics, financial engineering, literature, poetry, you name it. And as a result, she acquired 2 PhDs. Very, very unusual. 2 PhDs. One in quantum mathematics and the other in financial engineering. Very similar PhDs. I mean, really different. And as a young lady, she became very passionate about being persistent and about accomplishing her goals. And at least 2 times in her life, she was threatened with kidnapping. Now that's pretty serious. And this particular individual is still young. And when she was confronted by kidnappers, she basically said, "Give me those guns." And she was so strong, so direct, that the people with the guns said, okay, sorry, and gave her the guns. With the power of her mind to harmonize the situation, cause no killing, no murder, nothing wrong, just harmony and peace and moving in the right direction. This lady then became known as the genius. The genius. And she began to do work to help anybody, everybody, in any way, to raise their intelligence, to nurture their innate genius, in which she believed. She has become a goodwill ambassador. She has become the Genius of the Year in 2013. She is the inspirational figure, an award for the Arab female population because of her persona as a manifestation of a human being who can come from anywhere low, seen as a moron, and she can rise as any good intelligence can to become the extraordinary, peaceful, kind, energetic, Avicenna-like individual. It has nothing to do with age or sex or religion. It is pure God-given genius. And this individual has the Avicenna Award. The recipient will be the ideal candidate and the owner of that award, because the energy that she has will spread around the world. And that energy is in this room. And Manahel is here, and Professor, Doctor, Genius, Goodwill Ambassador, Manahel, you are the new Avicenna awardee.
You more than deserve it. Thank you. Do you want to say a few words? I'm going to ask her to.
Once.
I'll be glad to say a few words.
You're going to say a few words. Huh?
This is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, Einstein once said, if you understand it well, you explain it simply. And my speech today is very simple. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Royal Highnesses, dignitaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be handed over this award after the legendary Tony Buzan.
Hooray.
And it's a great honor that the name of this international prestigious award is in recognition of the best and the most intelligent genius of the Islamic Golden Age, the Muslim scholar Ibn Sina. I'm delighted to accept this award from the Brain Trust and the Avicenna Committee 2014, and I hereby pledge to defend this award and its principle. I'm also privileged to be assigned as the Vice President and the President of the Middle East and North Africa branch of the Brain Charity. Thank you for that. Strive is a key word in the well-being of every intellectual. It's the fuel that keeps the engine going. In the Middle East, we need to highlight and improve the gifted children education and exploration. My wish is that intellect around the world could join their thoughts, ideas, and actions to send some light across the world and work together for the betterment of humanity. Only intellectuals can turn differences into similarities. My country, Yemen, has been going through a very sad period lately. And I hope by winning this award, I will draw smiles in the faces of many. And I know the future is brighter. I also thank UAE, my second home, for its constant support, care, and hospitality. But let me share my life motto with you. I believe if the universe exists, the sky is not the limit. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis.
And you can find in Forbes magazine wonderful features, business, wonderful features on Manahel.
Before we move on to the Brain of the Year award, I just want to show you Manahel's map mind map of the universe. There we go. I'm sure you can see it again later on. I'll keep it here for future reference. Thank you so much, everyone who participated in that award. And well done, Manor Hill. Absolutely brilliant. Congratulations once again. Everybody should now also have a sheet about the award, something about Avicenna, something about Manor Hill, something about the Brain Trust. I'm sure Manor Hill will be only too delighted to sign souvenir copies later on if you wish. And once again, I have to thank my good friend, Mr. Chris Day, who is the cement and glue of more or less everything I do, without which it would fall into total shambles and ruin, who managed to produce this at very short notice in perfect shape and fulfilled the entire mandate. Chris, thank you very much again. Now we move on to the Brain of the Year award, which the Brain Trust charity has been awarding since 1991. We started with the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov. We've had Sir Stephen Hawking, Steve Redgrave, Edward de Bono, Baroness Greenfield, and I'm delighted to say one of the previous brains is here. Where is it? Yes, Prince Mohsen Ali Khan for his services to world peace 2 years ago, and the reigning brain, Professor Michael Crawford, who knows how to feed the planet, even if the rest of the world's governments don't, who is the reigning brain of the year, whose reign is about to end. So I would like once again to invite our triumvirate of brains and local genius MPs, mayors, Councillor Francis Stainton, who I stress yet again was traduced by the pre-Cambrian slime that exists in Hammersmith and Fulham. If you would come up again to help present the Brain of the Year award, and I invite yet again Professor Tony Buzan to extol the preamble and assist in the presentation of this year's Brain. So, Professor Crawford, do come up again. Prepare for your execution, demotion, and relegation to mere mortal instead of being the Brain of the Year. Francis, Prince Mohsen, do come up again. Tony, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon again. So we are now on to the Brain of the Year award, and briefly to introduce the award itself, it was based on the idea that all charities and all awards to do with the brain tended to focus on illness, disease, Alzheimer, etc., the problems of the brain and the illnesses and diseases. And there was obviously another perspective on the brain, which was this extraordinary thinking human tool which has wonderful things. So the Brain of the Year award was evolved to give an award for a human brain that manifested itself in the fields of culture, of art, of science, and where all the individuals were, if you like, polymathic. They were physically fit, they dreamt about their particular goal, they built schools, education, they taught people about the amazing things that they were doing. They became global leaders in their field. They did love humanity without exception. They were, if you like, role models for the brain. Now, the average assumption about a brain and a person who is brainy is, well, let me ask you, the average brainy person, what kind of complexion? What complexion do you think around the world people think a very intelligent person is like?
Probably scholastic.
Scholastic. Glasses or no glasses?
I don't think that myself, but the kind of general.
No, this is not you. This is definitely not you. Definitely not. The global picture, and I have done this around the world, is wearing glasses, thick or thin lenses. Thick. Posture, hunched. Social intelligence, zero zeros. The picture is evolving, isn't it? Number of friends? None. Or a computer. So the brain of the year is for a human being who is a manifestation of mens sana in corpore sano, mind in body. And the awards have been given to individuals who manifest that. And you are already in the presence of 3 who are wonderful examples of that. So today, the award is going to be given to yet another individual who focuses on the positive future and who helps people and who has become globally known in the field where that individual is. Now, first of all, let me ask you a couple of questions. How many of you daydream? How many of you daydream every day? Wonderful. How many of you have had a daydream in the very, very short time that I've been talking to you? And I know you have. Because the daydreamer, right? The daydreamer is visionary. When the daydream, which is human, when the daydream is made what? Yeah, the daydream is made real. So those who have won the award fought for their dream to help that dream come true. Now, a couple of other questions. How many of you are artists? Okay, so a couple of you. How many of you not artists? How many of you have had difficulty with art? Okay, so a number of you. I'm going to give you just a little something to show you. And I'll give a couple of these to a table and just show them around and see what you think these are. All right, team, I've had at least 2 of you say that those are mine. Thank you for your honoring of me, but those were not mine. So any thoughts on those? Absina, original drawings. The garden of Absina. Arabic style, this particular one there. This one from a young genius child. Those drawings are done by individuals who publicly stated, and they all had degrees in various degrees, they all confirmed that they could not in any way genetically draw. They could not. And they had tried and they could not. They tried a couple of times and gave up, and for their entire lives they therefore removed themselves from art. All of those are drawn by people who thought they couldn't. They thought they couldn't. So they obviously had lessons. So how long do you think it took for them to battle through the way of learning how to draw? How long did it take? I mean, how many drawings did they have to do before that is the latest one? Too much?
No, I think they didn't do any.
3 years? 1 year? 4 times? Well, you'll be pleased to know, and you can look at those during the time after this, all of those are the first drawing that every one of them did. The first drawing in their lives of people who could not. Those drawings were inspired by an individual who believed that everybody innately was an artist, and that an artist was also a scientist, that they learned how to use their brain properly, they learned the language of visual and logical thinking, and translated that externally from their brain. So teacher helped them do that. Alexander is going to just show, ta-da! That is a painting, and it's called, very appropriately, The Global Brain. And that was drawn, painted by hand. No ruler, no measuring implement, simply the brain painting the global brain. There is another one. And that is the global brain at night. At night. And the artist with a superb visiotechnologist have worked out how to take an original painting and transform it into a different perspective. The artist who did that is the artist who helped all those individuals draw that in the first time of their life, having said they couldn't. The same artist worked with the BBC. And in 1974, the BBC published a book called Use Your Head. And it's a book that introduced mind mapping to the world. And the BBC had that drawing of the brain the first book to say, use your head, use your brain, and it's the same artist who did that painting, who did those through the students, and who did this, and who also in the first book drew the eye, the function of perception. How many of you are mind mappers? Many of you. And the mind map was inspired by a number of things, but including the importance of image and association and color. And so it was an artist who inspired me in the invention of the mind map to embed all the mind maps with image, color, appropriate design, association. That was the same artist who inspired 250 million mind maps around the world. That particular artist was also considered to be a delinquent in an art school for making sure that every canvas that was painted was protected. So kind of casual students hanging around becoming artists, which they weren't. Protected the space where the image could be transferred from the brain to the canvas. That same artist went to Alice Springs in Australia and had to fight for art. For example, a number of Australian ladies in Alice Springs wanted to learn art, so the artist trained them. And what happened in their homes? The husbands or companions pounded those ladies because they were women and because they were artistically inclined and therefore communist, ridiculous, feminine, not real. And that artist stayed in Alice Springs and defended a family of women who wanted to learn to draw and paint. And she defended them against a gang of individuals who were smashing the faces of these ladies. During that time, the same artist was very engaged with the Aboriginals. And the Aboriginal leaders actually protected her from a distance. So when she would walk at night on the hills in Alice Springs, somewhere way down there was an Aboriginal leader who was protecting her, following her from a distance to make sure that everything was okay. And the Aboriginals protected this artist and called her that woman with them sticks. Right? That woman with them sticks, which were, of course, what? Her paintbrushes, her crayons. That woman with them sticks. So physically, incredibly powerful, because also to paint is not doing nice little watercolors and being happy. It's picking up a giant canvas, which is weighed down by stones worth of paint and carrying it. And that painting, the first one that Alexander has shown, was painted in the desert. in the desert, in a little kind of canvas shed leeway. So it was just canvas here, flap here, and the painting was done in here, in 95 degrees of temperature, on a camel farm. And that's all there was. No electricity, no fridge, no cup of tea, just painting that in 95 degrees throughout the days, measuring it, dealing with all the sand, and that is what an artist does. So an artist is not an airy-fairy creature. And this same artist went to Spain and decided that dance was similarly vitally important. And so what would she do? As any genius would do, goes to the best teacher, La Kika, the top teacher of flamenco. And the same artist studied in Madrid for 1 year in a basement, 9-10 hours a day, dancing, practice doing all the steps, the movements, dancing to the guitar. That same individual was zeroed in on by the BBC, and they wanted to do programs on art, and they wanted to discuss Cézanne and Henry Moore. And the world expert, John Berger, the critic, was asked to give the presentation on Moore and on Cézanne. And John Berger said, "I know nothing about that, especially Cézanne, in comparison to the artist who should be on the television." And that artist was the same individual. And the BBC producer, at the end of a 1-hour program with the top individuals in art, actually said publicly, the only person on that panel who really knew about Cézanne, about Moore, was the same individual. That same individual works ideally and in her life to train anybody to understand what drawing and painting is, what art really is, what the human language in that arena is, and to have that spread to every single child on the planet. Because every child is an artist, and every artist, as you can see, is also a scientist. That individual has many other arrows to her quiver, and you will discover those during the time together and the signing time in the afternoon. But one of the things that she has done is to write a thesis on the nature of perception, how the brain actually sees. And the same artist has written that, and it was so complex that people kind of said, what? What? It was Einsteinian in its nature. And that was put into a box for 30 years. 30 years from now, it was in a box, just waiting. And it has now been discovered, and people are beginning to say, oh my God, what is this? This is like E equals MC squared. It's that theoretical, and it's human. So it is my great pleasure and an honor and a wonderment, in a sense, for the inspiration of the artist in every soul. So if the previous brains of the years could come up, and Councillor, Prince, as Ray said, Professor Michael Crawford holds the Brain of the Year baton for about 1 minute, 1 precious minute, because the Brain of the Year this year is Lorraine Cahill, the artist.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you so much. What an honour. Where do I stand?
You're going to stand in front of the microphone,
Oh.
don't you? But you have to be given it.
You have to be
I've
given
got
it.
glasses.
Doesn't count.
Oh, it might help, yeah. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank
Michael,
you.
will you say a couple of words first and then hand it to Lorraine? No?
Not saying any words now.
It's hers. This is to her.
Am I standing in
Oh.
front of you?
You see?
Yes?
Don't run away. You have so many goodies. But there is another one which we have to present you for the
you.
work what you have done.
Thank you.
And I think that one can see even the paradise during the daylight. So somehow your imagination has no limit, and we have to cope with that. And this is
Thank you.
a small gift from all of us,
Uh-huh.
and from the Brain Trust
Oh,
for you.
thank you. Can I open it now?
Yes.
Excellent. Gosh, exciting, exciting. What is it? It's only finished around this train. Like a twin from Australia, born like me at the end of September. They're both drew first. What's this?
Somebody called you in, wasn't it?
2014. Warranurra, the divine Aboriginal culture hero of New South Wales, had a hand in shaping the person you turned out to be. While you might care to amuse your assembled admirers with a brief account of how I came into the world, remember the violin. It's absolutely lovely. So that's from Julian.
Yes, he's got a jaw infection. He couldn't do
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, it's overwhelming.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Get off. Now, can everyone hear me? Because previously there were intervals when I couldn't hear much of what was being said. So if everyone can hear me, yes? That's fine. So, distinguished guests, I'm just so honoured. I'm over the moon to have received the Brain of the Year. And for 1 second, when my name was read out, I was inclined to sort of look elsewhere, because it's so improbable that I would be standing here, and with your patience, I'd like to tell you a story, and it's mainly a story of hope and persistence, because as I'm standing here looking at you, and thank you so much for being here, my mind is travelling back to the Australian bush in around 1941 to 45, post-war, 5 houses on a dusty old road. We wore no shoes. It was tough. No NHS, no welfare state. We walked to school 5 miles there and back, jumping over the proverbial snakes and the spiders that inhabit Australia. And we grew up tough, and we grew up with values. And the values we grew up with was loyalty to friends, standing by your friends, always sharing with a guest, and no matter what happened to you, you kept going. You got up each day and you just kept on going no matter what the situation was. Well, it was so isolated that I sent away for a correspondence course to draw. And when the information came back, I just copied these things, and I had been promoted from little primary school to secondary school, where it was considered I was not bright enough to be a secretary.
Just as well.
So there, but I was bright enough to be a cook, a chef.
That's all right.
And her name was Mrs. Olson, and we never forget our teachers, do we? So at secondary school in Bankstown, named after Sir Joseph Banks, the botanist who went out there with Captain Cook, I had two teachers. It's always that, isn't it? Two teachers, one a geometry teacher and the other was my art teacher. And little beknownst to me, he placed my drawings in the local fair. There were sort of, dairy fairs, farming fairs at that particular time in Australia. Very, very little culture. The only culture really was farming and surviving, and no books or anything to do with high culture in those primitive circumstances was not of a necessity. So I won some prizes, which I still have, a blue ribbon for a drawing and a red ribbon for a painting. Now also, I didn't know that he was going to place my work in what we called in Aussie the Big Smoke. That was the nearest city, and that was Sydney. And it was so frightening for my parents that my grandmother had to take me into the Big Smoke, because only she was tough enough and brave enough to take me in there, because the same teacher, Mr. Davies, had placed me in for a scholarship. And the scholarship was won out of the entire school by me. I was 15 years old, and it's only now when I look back I think, that's incredibly young for a naive outback girl to go into the Big Smoke to do training. But that training was absolutely remarkable. I stayed there for 3 years, but also at that time, this is in the 50s, the late 50s, there wasn't much culture at all. There wasn't much opportunity for a female artist, because it was expected that I should have been married by 17 and to have had 12 kids at least by 35. So it was a complete breaking of the norm. So I left home and did 3 jobs. And my grandmother, tough as old boots, after I had said to her Nan, look, I really have to get to Europe. I've seen some dancing. I really have to go there. And my grandmother, who was totally disciplined and worked as a cleaner, who brought up her 2 sons, who saw her husband go off to fight in Gallipoli, and her other son fight, come over to Europe, fight in the Middle East, Cyprus, etc., had gone through all of that toughness. And she said to me, I've never forgot it, you have that money on the dresser every week or I'll kick you out. Well, I did. I worked 3 jobs for 2.5 years. That money was on the dresser and Nana would go and put it into the bank.
What 3 jobs?
The 3 jobs were painting murals on the weekends, working in an art department during the day, and teaching ballroom and Latin American dancing in the evenings. So it was quite busy, and I got to Europe. Now, my grandmother was the first disciplinarian in my life. I've never forgotten it. Even when my close friend died, and I was broken-hearted, she said, Lorraine, she said, you get up in the morning and you go to work. And I certainly did. An incredible example. When I got to Spain, I wasn't quite sure where I was going. I mean, a naive Australian. I was 22 years old, and I went over on my own in the boat. And the boat was full of English people who were disgruntled because they'd gone to Australia and couldn't hack it, it was so tough. So all of us Aussies received insults all the way over to Europe, saying you're nothing but a load of bloody old convicts anyway. So it wasn't too pleasant sailing, and it also was over a month, to get to Europe in those days. Eventually, I arrived in Madrid with broken Spanish and found a taxi and said, I have to go to find La Kika. And he went like that. I beg your pardon. So the first time I saw octopus, I wanted to pack my bag as a naive Australian and then just go home. It was a foreign culture. I was completely alone, nobody to help me. I pounded the streets. Now, I didn't know, but La Kika turned out to be the most eminent flamenco dancer known in Spain that day. It was Franco's Spain. And her husband, Frasquillo, had taught the great Antonio, the greatest Spanish dancer. And she took me in. I lived with her for over a year, another disciplinarian. Up at 7 in the morning, go to the dancing bar, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other, never deviating in that complex, fantastic art form called flamenco. So, after over a year, I have to tell you, there was one complicated dance called the farruca, because I learned the female and the male dances. And this dance incorporated 3 spinnings, dropping down onto one knee, rising up, and then doing more spinning. After having done 11 spins and falling onto the floor, with her just staring at me, expecting me to get up, on the 12th spin, I just sat down and then I cried. And she said just a few things, like my grandmother. She said, venga, una más. And on the 13th try, I perfected it. She was absolutely extraordinary. So then I was on my way to England. I mean, an amazingly colourful life. And as it happened, there were things that happened in Australia which meant that I could not go home. I ended up more or less as a refugee. And I'd been going along to Arthur Murray's teaching dancing in the evenings and testing light bulbs in a factory during the day. Now, this was my first experience of Cockney ladies. Now, because Australians are brought up to hard graft, the manager of the light bulb factory said, I like you. He said, I'm going to promote you to inspector of bulbs. So I was promoted to inspector of bulbs, which meant I sat at the top and all of the ladies were in front of me, and then they were looking up at me one day, and I had a little finger going up like that, inspecting the bulbs. And then they were all laughing at me, and I said, well, what's wrong? They said, look at you. You don't belong in here with us, Lorraine. Look at her little finger. And they all took me home for Christmas, because they knew I didn't have anybody. That was my first experience. So, in the evenings, going along to teach and to learn ballroom dancing, there was, the manager had said, would you mind if you showed your dance repertoire to the rest of the new class? I said, no, not at all. So I went through my repertoire like that, and then the next minute, somebody detached themselves from the class. Someone who I thought had an American accent. And the Aussies at the time didn't think much of Americans. So I didn't quite take to him. And then he said, this is absolutely fantastic. You've got to do this, and you've got to do that, and you've got to do that. And I thought, oh, well, this is an extraordinary sort of person, never seen or heard of anyone like him before. Well, who do you think it was? It was Tony.
The Canadian.
This is nearly 50 years ago, an extraordinary meeting up of two people coming from two different countries, supposedly going elsewhere, but somehow through life, the fantastical thing called life, have remained friends nearly 50 years. Now, it was through Tony, with my ending up as more or less a refugee, it was through Tony who gave me opportunities to resume my life again. So, with this thank you to my grandmother, to Kika, to the BBC producer called Mac, who was of a similar ilk, to all of the people, as Newton said, I stand on the shoulders of giants. So in an odd way, it's not really me standing here. It's everybody who's helped me, who's pushed me above their heads to help me get a hand, and that's why I'm in this position today. So thank you, Tony, very, 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 very much for enabling me to stand here. Thank you so much.
Don't forget, that is yours.
Thank you, and this is mine. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Now we come to the next surprise. Tony mentioned Lorraine's thesis on perspective and vision and perception. And if you look over there, as if by magic, the books and the thesis have appeared. So, Lorraine, can I ask you to assume the position? And I'm sure everyone would love to have a signed copy of your book. That book. Now, before Lorraine starts signing, sit down, Lorraine. Before Lorraine starts signing, I want to point out something. In the book, I rescued, with the help of a certain Agent Morris. Where is Agent Morris? Over there. Agent Morris, who smuggled out of Lorraine's house various documents without telling her. And I inserted in the book the original unedited version of her thesis. Meanwhile, Tony and my son Alexander were beavering away producing an edited version. And you'll find that in the books you've got over there, the unedited version, the original, is in the book, and the edited version, which was finished about midnight last night, is there as a PhD pull-out supplement. So there you are. Lorraine, get out your pen and get ready to start signing. Thank you very much. Today's event was sponsored by the Brain Trust charity, and our primary objective is to recognise excellence in intelligence. We do our best to help the underprivileged, those without access to education and educational tools, but primarily we want to reward those and acknowledge those who've got to the very top. And today we recognised Dr. Manahal Thabet from the Yemen by awarding her the Avicenna Medal that bridges the gulfs between Islam, other cultures, other religions and other societies. Her work has been absolutely fantastic. She's previously been named Genius of the Year, and she was the automatic outstanding choice to win the medal. Next, we awarded our prestigious Brain of the Year award to the Australian artist Lorraine Gill, whose entire career has built upon persistence, teaching art to young people, capturing the essence of a native Australia, and convincing people that art is an intellectual, not just an emotional exercise. So to summarise, the Brain Trust, pioneered by Tony Buzan, the inventor of mind maps, and today in two separate but very important areas, we honoured excellence of intellectual achievement.
I'm deeply honored today to be the winner of the Avicenna Award. It's an award named after the Muslim scholar Avicenna, Ibn Sina we call. I was truly privileged, honored to be receiving it after Tony Buzan, the inventor of the mind mapping, and I hope that I will be, carrying out the message and the principle of this award for the next year to come. The event was lovely. It was amazing. Support from everybody, including Royal Highnesses, dignitaries, excellencies, and on top of them, Tony Buzan and Raymond Keane representing the Brain Trust. I thank TVapex for the lovely coverage of this event, and I wish you all the best and God bless.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honour to be here and a great joy and pleasure as well. I think that the Brain of the Year is quite one of the most exciting things I come to, and it makes me think, yes, we were talking about when we were giving the Avicenna Award. That was in the year 1000, and when you think the Italian Renaissance in 1500, we had another period when there was this ability of very intelligent people to grasp the whole of the learning of their era. Now, the whole of learning has become so enormous, the depth of study and detail and the breadth of subject is too much for any one person to grasp. However, we've been greatly helped by having the website. And anything we don't know or don't understand, we can immediately learn about. So we've been given a helping hand to trying to understand the whole of our era as well. And then when we go on to the other things about today, we had the Brain Trust, we had Avicenna. I think we had a group of very special people. Certainly the artist has a remarkable talent and a remarkable strength of personality. And I love the way she faced all her terrible difficulties as a small child. And she's right after my own heart, because I'm totally against this ridiculous phrase, mind the step. We should mind the step for ourselves, and we should be dependent on ourselves and not expecting somebody else always to be there for us at every minute. Because there are times in your life when there's no one to tell you to mind the step. You've got to mind your own step. So that's my philosophy. Mind your own step and help others, but don't have this ridiculous help that you shouldn't need at all. Now, I think that's probably all I want to say, except good luck to everybody, and many, many thanks for coming. And, of course, dear Apex, who I admire enormously. I'm delighted you're doing this program, and I hope all your viewers are going to learn something interesting today from our event.
I'm absolutely thrilled, excited, surprised, humbled, and over the moon to receive the Brain of the Year Award 2014. I had no idea whatsoever that I would be standing on the shoulders of giants today, all of the previous winners, and what remarkable people they are. So I'm quite beside myself with excitement, and I have to thank the committee, Mr. Ray Keane and Tony Buzan, everybody who selected me for this particular award today. So, we'll carry the banner for the arts and for Australia, for England, for any country that's given me this opportunity, and thank you to all the people who I am representing today who have helped me in the past and present. Thank you so much. Thank you.